Personal branding is deep work, right? Sometimes it can challenge you. Trying to work out where your value is and how to price yourself as a service provider is tricky. But this conversation with ex-British Army Lieutenant Colonel might help you with this topic. Stay tuned.
You're listening to The Brand Compass, conversations to navigate your way to building a brand fit for purpose and poised for success. Here's your host, 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗏.
Hello there, my friend, and welcome back if you're a returning listener. If you are new to me and the show, I'm 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦, your host on this conversational journey. This is a relaxed space on the net where we get together and we chat about all the ways in which your personal brand meets the humans you serve. And today I'm adding to the conversations in my series that I've been having with people who come from completely different fields of expertise and come on and share how they are faring, shaping a version of themselves that they are happy to share with the outside world and what that looks and feels like for them. I'm adding to our guests who have held roles within the British military. So if you remember, we've had behind the scenes stories from former Royal Marine Commander Jack Fleckney and also former Typhoon fighter pilot with the Royal Air Force, Helen Seymour. And today we add a seasoned former Lieutenant Colonel from the British Army to our lineup. So let me give you a bit of an introduction to him and then we can get cracking with our conversation today. Ian Astley retired from the British Army after serving more than 3 decades in various progressive leadership roles across the military, both domestically and abroad. While he was mainly leading soldiers on operations and broadly handling operational planning, carrying out complex project management and training design and delivery, his true calling was in developing people. His biggest passion lies in coaching and mentoring, which he has spent much of his time doing. For example, mentoring senior leaders and their staff from the Parachute Regiment and Royal Marine Commandos, Britain's highest readiness operational battalions and brigades. He crossed over to work in the civilian world as well, like being asked to work with the senior NHS leaders as they navigated complexities of leading through the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, Ian runs his own coaching and mentoring business, working with organizations and individuals who are facing similar deep challenges of building leadership resilience and navigating complex people and economic decisions, while also improving their self-awareness and enhancing their own personal lives in the face of tough working environments. Outside of work, Ian is a sports and outdoors enthusiast and is a professional bike mechanic that sometimes travels with a few competitive ladies cycling teams. He lives in Lincolnshire with his wife Rachel and is father to 4 young men. Welcome, Ian.
Thanks very much for having me on your podcast. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm very excited. We had quite a good conversation in our preparation conversation. I got to hear all about your career. But I think to kick us off, what I'd like us to do, the thing that stood out for me a little bit was young Ian. Sometimes we have some young people listening to the show or parents of young people. And sometimes I find it useful just to share how wiggly our paths can be and how people started out in their professions. So I'd love to get the details of how young Ian was feeling when he was making those early career choices.
Yeah, well, it was a long time ago, wasn't it? I mean, the world was in black and white, I think. But
you are a young man, Ian. Come on.
I was really into the Scouts.
Yeah.
I really loved my sport. So I hold those two thoughts. But then, as a 14-year-old, the Falklands War was on, and for a 14-year-old boy, I know it was deadly and dangerous, but that was quite exciting. But it was the height of the Cold War as well. And one of my concerns was that there's going to be a Cold War and nuclear Armageddon before I get to learn to drive a car.
Oh.
So then doing a bit of history at school, we covered the First World War and learned that actually the people who were called up to fight in the First World didn't get a whole lot of training. So as I looked into these things, I wanted to go to university. I wanted to have some sort of gap years. And it turns out that the Army runs a short service commission, a 3-year contract.
Yeah.
And if you pass the selection test at a right bar, then they'll actually sponsor you through university, give you a bit of money for that as well. So this seemed great. Now I wanted to become an accountant. So I went to a firm of accountants and had this discussion with them, said, look, I want 3 gap years in the army and then I want to be an accountant. They said, brilliant, mate, that's fine. Give us a call when you're leaving the army. Well, I passed the selection tests. I did get sponsored through university. I went to Sandhurst to do my training after university, like anybody becoming an army officer does. Mm-hmm. And 33 years later, I've just finished my gap years, and now I'm not going to become an accountant.
And you did go back to the accounting firm, but they're no longer in business, so that did not help, did it?
They're out of business.
You did have to kind of choose, didn't you? Like in terms of which arm of military you go into. So land, sea, and air. So tell us why you chose land.
Yeah. So why the army? I joined my local infantry regiment, the Royal Anglian Regiment. In those days, the 3rd Battalion, known as the Pompadours. But why not the Air Force? I get travel sick, and I couldn't have put up with flying around in an aeroplane, quite frankly. And similarly, the Navy at sea.
Motion
Didn't
sickness.
really fancy that, and also your ship gets torpedoed. It's
Where do you
awfully
go?
cold and wet out there, and not at least so on land I'm sort of grounded. I mean,
and you can run in all directions, right? I mean, you planned this.
it was that. I mean, it was part of the thought process. What can I tell you?
Okay, I love it. So what I'd like us to do is kind of try and talk adjacent to your military career now, and talk a little bit, because 3 decades is a massively impressive career, right? And I want to look at like the stuff that you learned while you were in that arena, and then brought it into the world that you're working in today, which is largely civilian, although you do some coaching and facilitation work with some military associate contract work, right? So now for civilians moving from employment to self-employment, they've got their own journey of discovery and ache, right? But I feel like people who come from the military, they have got this extra layer of work that they have to do, because the commercial world doesn't, unfortunately, like run to a hierarchy or a set of rules that everybody's abiding to, right? And nor do businesses really have this altruistic overriding purpose for service or for the betterment of everyone. Okay, yes, there are some purpose-driven businesses, but I'm just talking in general. So I'm curious to find out from you what your biggest realization has been for you in terms of this difference of working in the army and with soldiers, and then now working with business owners or individuals in the commercial world.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest differences, and you touched on it there, really is about process to a large extent. The army, certainly in barracks and even on operations, is really driven by process. There's a lot of policies and procedures, and that's a strength and a weakness as far as I'm concerned. It really, they go into planning in detail. They do some really deep analysis for planning, have structured decision making. And I think that sort of thing is all really positive. Maybe it can lead to some inflexibility. There's quite a lot of bureaucracy in camp. Now on operations, things tend to be a bit different, and people do get to use their initiative, and things happen quite a bit quicker. In what I found in civilian business is that there's quite a lot less process. Which
it's one extreme to the other almost.
Yeah, it has some positives. You get some quick decisions. You get quite agile thinking at times, but I also find you don't get to that next level of thinking. It's not always deep. It's not always consistent. Some of the decision making isn't really grounded in some decent analysis. So for me, that's kind of the side that I think I've noticed most.
Is it not also a level of inefficiency then? Because I mean, the reason why I like systems and procedures is that you're not having to make the same decision multiple times. Something that's worked already in the past, just do it the way. Yes, they always refresh and review, right? So I think, I probably would have done well in the military. I would have enjoyed I like hierarchy and an order of things. I don't like being pushed around or told what to do, so maybe that's an issue. I'd have to be pretty high ranking, maybe.
Okay. But I also think that yes, there are orders, and there comes a time for telling people exactly what to do.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of time spent in the military delegating and empowering people to make their own decisions and use their own initiative.
Initiative.
And the
Nice.
whole Army's command philosophy, mission command, is all about that. It's telling people why something needs doing and what needs doing, but allowing them to decide how to do it.
Nice.
And I spend quite a lot of time with businesses talking about delegation or really emancipation.
Yeah.
Letting people be in charge of their own destiny to a certain extent, having explained to them the objective that's trying to be achieved and giving them the resources to do it.
Nice. All right. Maybe I would have been all right. I'm too old now. They won't have me. I think also one of the things that kind of stuck out for me when we were chatting in prep for today was that this element of, I know Simon Sinek talks a lot about this stuff because he works a lot with Navy SEALs and that, but tackling this area of building trust and respect, you know, and you talked about this when you had to move regiments, you know, move from one to another. And you said that it was quite rare for someone in a military career to actually move regiments, but you had to because you gotten that promotion. So while you did have the authority of your rank, you found quite quickly that you had to almost start again and know your place in terms of building trust and respect. So could you talk to us a little bit about what that was like? Because I feel like it will feed a little bit into the reputation and personal brand bits we want to get into.
Okay. Yeah, well, I was adding it up last night, and I changed school after my O-levels to go to a different school for the sixth form. So I moved once to go to sixth form, then I moved to university, then I moved to Sandhurst. Then after Sandhurst, I went to my first regiment, but the battalion in that regiment I joined got disbanded, so I had to move to another battalion. And then once I and the army came to the agreement that I'd have a full career, I had to change regiment again.
Yeah.
And those 6 changes came in a period of 11 years. And given that I was at university for 3 of those years, it was a lot of change. It was a lot of starting again. And, you know, what I found, and I'm a little bit reserved, and I found that you couldn't go in and really open up too much, and you certainly couldn't tell stories about, in my previous battalion we did this, because they go, well, I don't care, you're in our battalion now, you're part of this team, don't tell me about stories from your old team.
Another team, yeah.
So it took a time to get some shared experiences before you could really bond and join in. And you touched on trust there, and you know, lots of listeners, I'm sure you are aware of the trust equation.
Yeah.
And there's different versions of this, but you know, it's a mixture of your competence, so that you're actually good at doing something, your reliability, that you do it consistently, and then your connection to other people. So I found that I had to display those 3 things and not display self-interest and selfishness, which takes away from that level of trust. And it took a while to do that, to get fully embedded with new teams each time as I was changing these organisations.
And you did share little stories, a little bit insight into sometimes, and this might be useful for listeners who are doing something similar, where they're either changing vertically in careers or horizontally, is this element, you can almost kind of borrow some trust and respect from good allies that everybody else is looking up to. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like when you moved regiments and you would have to almost be in charge of the soldiers, and they did have to follow you, and because you gave orders, but they didn't necessarily trust you yet. But from your standpoint, as long as you started to build strong relationships with, you know, the people that they do report to, and then they start to almost see you in the same light. It's almost like that ripple effect of, okay, they trust him, and therefore if he trusts you, then they're allowed to start trusting you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So particularly as a junior officer, you come in the infantry, you command a platoon, and nearly everybody in that platoon is more experienced than you. At least half of that platoon is older than you. And they've been in leadership positions, the junior NCOs, the corporals, and certainly your platoon sergeant, they've been in leadership positions for years. And the British Army has a wonderful relationship between officers and NCOs, and the NCOs are there to guide the officer, but understanding that junior officer is in charge and ultimately will make the decision whether to go left or right.
And NCO, is that?
That's non-commissioned officers.
Non-commissioned
So
officers, okay.
Lance corporals and sergeants at a platoon level.
Yeah.
And that relationship you need to build quite quickly with your platoon sergeant in particular and your platoon corporals is crucial, so that they understand you, that you build that bond of trust, and so you rely on their experience and you would run ideas past them, but you would be responsible for making
final
the decision.
decisions.
And with that trust that you've built with them, people will follow you.
Nice. And that translates quite nicely into business and thinking of, the different levels of management in an organization, new CEOs coming in and then having to start this whole tenuous thing of those who care about the job and doing it well will be trying to build this tenuous link of trust and, through the people that are already there and they're already in place. But I think that keys us up nicely, because I want to kind of from that, with people's perceptions of you coming in, I think I'd like to talk through a little bit what you think personal brand is and what, how would you describe that?
Well, to me, I think personal branding is about being really clear and consistent in showing your uniqueness, I guess. And what's that uniqueness? I think relating it to me, I rely a lot on my military experience. I've done a lot. There's many other people who've also done a lot in the military, but they won't have done exactly what I've done. I've got a unique set of experiences. I've got a reasonably unique set of skills compared with many because of some of the things I've picked up over the time, and then your values as well. So it's trying to represent that set of uniqueness consistently and clearly. I suppose that's what it means.
You had a nice metaphor for that with medals. Describe that to me.
we were talking about medals,
yeah,
weren't we? Yeah. And I mean, because I hung around so long, I ended up with quite a few. And again, there's lots of people in the military who have medals, but it's unlikely that anybody's got exactly the same collection as I have in exactly the same order. And I suppose personal branding to a certain extent is like that. People have similar experiences, they may have the same experiences, but they're not necessarily put together to lead to that unique person in terms of personal branding, or in this case, set of medals. So perhaps
Nice.
perhaps there's some relationship there.
Yes, I like that. And I think for the listeners, because I do ask this personal brand question to people even when I'm networking, and they really struggle. And sometimes what I say is, well, actually, just have a think about or reflect on somebody else that seems to be getting it right to you, and they might be professionally, it might be in the media, it might be celebrity, but then just note, how do you actually feel about them, and what is it that we think it is about them that makes you want to pay attention to them? Because we know how crowded like our news feeds are, even our workplaces, if we're in very busy work environments. There are people that stand out. Why do they stand out? So I think for anybody listening who can't work that out for themselves, rather look for those role models that actually for you seem to be doing it, I think there are some, I don't know if this is going to be true for you. I'm hoping it is. But when I chatted to Helen, our ex-Typhoon pilot, one of the things that stood out for me, obviously there's a lot of secrecy around the fast jets and the work that she was doing, that when she'd be in social environments, someone would go, so what do you do? And then she'd have to kind of play down or not even say what it was she'd done, because everybody would have some kind of view on it, or it could put her in an unsafe situation, if that makes sense. So I know you didn't necessarily, there's a lot of stuff you would have been involved in that you couldn't have spoken about, but your own personal identity, must have also taken a bit of a reset when you came out of the army, because you were no longer Lieutenant Colonel Astley. How was that adjustment? I know it's still fresh, but how has that adjustment been for you?
Generally, it's been fairly good. I'll honestly say it's not been too bad. I had a fairly easy, in air terms, a glide path out of the military, because my last role wasn't a frontline operational role. it wasn't even really working with soldiers. It was helping manage the MOD's housing estate, working with a lot of civilians.
Yeah.
I was able to do that and live in our own house for the first time in 20 years, rather than live in a military house, and that was lovely. And that was during COVID, so we ended up working from home in our pajamas and t-shirts like everybody else anyway. So I wasn't even wearing a uniform, for quite a bit of it, and that really helped me on my way, I think. Generally, those sort of factors. But then when I did leave, I did have a couple of weeks of feeling quite ungrounded, and I think partly because of the word retire. Oh, you're retired from the military. You're retired now. Oh, no, I'm still working.
Like it's, yeah.
And I had that little bit of feeling of being on the scrap heap, but certainly the consistency of my family really helped with that. And also the other thing that had stayed fairly consistent was coaching and mentoring, because I'd been doing that even though I'd been working with the housing estate. As you said, I'd done work during COVID with the NHS through the army, coaching some NHS leaders, and by this stage I'd become a volunteer mentor with a government charity and was mentoring a businessman who 4 or 5 years later we still have a mentoring relationship, which is excellent. So yeah, a little bit ungrounded at times, but generally a reasonable glide path, but maybe more by luck than judgment, perhaps.
I think the journey's different for everyone, isn't it? And I will say, from the ex-military personnel that I have managed to talk to, is they do try and pay attention to helping you make that transition, because it is quite a big mental jump to go from that kind of environment into civilian life. So yeah, but we're all different as well.
But I'm still doing some work with the military, and actually that's quite funny, and because it's all first name terms, which is absolutely great, whatever rank you are. So there's absolutely no lieutenant colonel there. Means I don't have to shave every day. I don't have to. I can put my hands in my pockets. I can even cut across the grass.
Nice.
But I don't, because that winds me up as well. So I'm still a bit old school. Stick to the plan.
But I think what's lovely is that you can automatically resonate with anybody that is working in the military that you are trying to mentor, because you're not just navigating them as humans, you're navigating them within the environments that they are in. Some things they have control over and some things they don't. And I think what's lovely for you as a mentor is that you've already got that understanding, which is lovely. Whether you're being a mentor, a coach, or a consultant, if you've had past experience, particularly where those environments are quite unique, I think that puts you above the rest, if that makes sense. Yeah. So, which kind of leads me on to what I want to talk about a little bit now, and this is marketable value, right? So this is what I would describe as one of the biggest challenges, I think, for knowledge workers, which is what you are, where your value is in your brain and it's seemingly intangible. We don't make products that we can make pretty wrapping for and talk about the benefits of, right? And it can be quite hard to articulate. So you're a few years in now, and you've had to kind of do a bit of work around this, bearing in mind this morphs and evolves until you feel like you've got it, right? But my question is to you, like, what challenges have you found in really nailing down how you express your value and then how you price that? Because I think everybody's got to deal with this, right? So I'm interested in hearing how you feel like you're doing right now and getting it right.
See me squirm in my seat then.
I did. I heard you squirm.
It is the most difficult thing.
Yeah.
And I have lots of conversations about it with a couple of peers in particular. We're constantly. I've got a very good friend who does challenge me quite a bit about how am I helping other people.
Yeah.
And I know how I want to be helping other people. I know how I think I'm helping other people. I know how I'm trying to help other people, these leaders I work with. But one of the things with coaching and mentoring, as you'll know, is that ultimately the outcomes rest with the individual coachee or mentee. You can't do things for them. You can help offer advice, you can help guide them to solutions that they've come up with themselves, but whether they take any action and the ultimate value they get out of it is down to what they choose to do as a result of the discussions you've had. So, as I say, I know how I want to be helping people. And one of the reasons I went into this is because I had no end of people who had gone through, in fact, some of my mentees who had gone through training with other people, leadership training. And I said, oh, excellent. So what have you done differently as a result of that? and nothing.
Oh.
And I can't, you can't force people to do something as a result, but I try to. But then how do you turn even what I think and hoping I am helping people with, and even some of the feedback I've got knowing that I have achieved, how do you turn that into a monetary value? It's really difficult.
It is really difficult, and I think it's a challenge we all I think you got to start somewhere, and then you got to move from there. The danger is if you start somewhere and you stay there and you don't move from there, because you'll end up not being very profitable at all, right? Especially if you're not very clear on valuing your own time and valuing, because most people in service of others, it's always about the others. It's always about the caring and the transformation of the others, right? So my approach in kind of trying to tackle these, because there's a lot of limiting belief work that you end up having to confront as well, and things of how things should be and how other people are telling you things should be. So while advice is useful, you've still got to weigh it up with your gut instinct and actually challenge some things, because the world is a very different place now. Me, for example, I've just slightly altered how I deliver my personal brand. Still the same content, but it was draining for me and for the client. It was big chunks of time and lots of hard thinking. And we thought, oh, you know what? It actually doesn't need to be this way. And now I've kind of stretched it out a bit. So we've got pauses and reflection time and time to do the exercise, because it's very deep work, and it unsettles a lot of dust and limiting beliefs and things you've got to challenge. And it's hard work. So I think, for those listening as well to us speaking, is it also, what I'm trying to say is it actually depends on what it is in the field that you're in and what you're doing, the type of work you're doing. For you and me, I think there is an energetic balance that we've got to have at the same time. So there's kind of 4 things I try and get people just to think about or challenge. First thing is context. I think you mentioned before about your medals and your uniqueness. I think you need to give the buyer, the person who's making a decision who they want to work with, you need to give them a reason to choose you as the professional for them to work with. So you need to be clear about how you are actually different. So this is the uniqueness work, right? So for me, I think the biggest advice there is to be really specific about your area of specialism or the area you focus in. The worst thing you can do is try and be everything to everyone, and everybody knows that, right? But when you start out in business, you go, I just want work, I want business, I want money, I can do anything. Actually, that's your worst thing that you can do, right? So just give them a bit of context. The second thing, and you and I talked a little bit about this, is giving them a better perspective as to, and there's 2 sides to this, right? One is the idea, firstly, of the breadth of problems that you have had to actually solve in the past. When you were active in the military, there were problems you physically had to solve, right? Now, when you're mentoring, you help other people solve those problems. But because you've had to do that in the past, sometimes by explaining, like even some of the logistics work that you had to do or the operational work, I mean, when you talk about the numbers of people and even the distances and locations, and actually that gives a breadth and perspective to people that you didn't just try and solve a squabble between 2 soldiers and that was your job. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. By actually giving that. But I think what's also really important is deciding what your lane is and sticking to it. So what do? You said before, be very clear, right? We talked before, you've got a mentor that works with you and he's very clear, right? What do you do and what don't you do? So if you are purely strategic and directional, say that. Be very clear. Or if you're quite executional, you help with the doing and making things happen, then say that and be clear. Just be very clear of what your lane is, where you come in to solve a problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and it's great advice. That's really good. A networking colleague, he gave an example of where he was pitching for his core role, and he thought it was going really well, and then he started saying, but I can also do this, and I can also do this, and I can also do this, and he's learnt a lesson, because he didn't get the contract, and the story he was telling me was when he asked for feedback from the client he was pitching to, they said, we were with you while you were this specialist, And then when you started saying we could do, we started to doubt how specialist you really were.
Oh,
in
nice
that core
point.
area that we wanted you. And it's a brilliant story, and plays right into what you're saying. I mean, I'm very clear that I'm a leadership coach and mentor.
Yeah.
I'm not a business coach. I don't know about the bottom line.
Yeah.
It's about leadership, whether that's your individual leadership or leading a team.
Nice.
Then that's what I can help with. That's where my experience is.
Perfect. So that brings me into this element of contribution, right? And this links into your marketable value. And this is where you look outside of your technical skills. So, you know, when you went to university or you went to Sandhurst and you did specific training to give, you know, or you had to learn very strategic technique, they are all technical skills, right? But what we've got to do is we've got to also look at the other things that make you the unique professional that you are. And those are your length of experience, like we said before, the breadth of your knowledge and your expertise, your unique talents. They're all this combination, which you said, with your medals, which actually makes you uniquely perfect for the client. So that is how you can improve a client's situation exponentially. That's where your contribution comes in. And that's what you're pricing, which, like you say, is not bloody easy at all, right? But all of this stuff that I've talked about is great when you're trying to stand out for the logical mind that's doing a fact check and an evidence going, why should I work with Ian? He does it. There's these lists, right? But the one thing that we've also still got to remember is the buyer or the client's limbic system, and that's their gut instinct, right? So we've also got to remember to share personal stories and our journey with people, because this gives them signals to their limbic system, which decides on the trust factor and things like that, which will then intimate to them what your values are, what your background is, and the things that their humanity wants to connect with. That's enough of me talking so much.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Does it help?
I'm glad I came on. I've got loads of notes here.
Before I close, Ian, because we're coming up to a time, there's one question though, and we can talk more about that offline if you like to, but there's one question that I know you've listened to a couple of episodes before, that I talk to people about what their ventral vagal system looks like, right? And this is and this is basically where your nervous system is really calm for the benefit of the listeners, and you're aligned. It means for some people that means you're calmed and you're chilled, and for others they're like highly charged and excited. But basically it's where time disappears. They're in their genius zone, they're at their best, they're doing their best work. What does that look and feel like for you?
You want an answer to do with business, don't you?
No, I don't. No, because this is the point, isn't it? Like,
no,
it's when it's
I mentioned sport and adventure training earlier. I was
Yes.
skiing last week, and I was coming down a black run in Teens, and I was just in that zone, you know. I couldn't have told you what was going on around me. I was just thoroughly in that
Nice.
zone of skiing down a run, and I vaguely saw the rest of our group stopped, and I wasn't stopping. I was just carrying on because I was there. I have it when I'm cycling sometimes, and you know, cycling with a group and really working hard and trying to chase somebody, and you think I can't keep going like this. And you can just keep going and going and going. And I don't know why, but sometimes you can work so hard because you're in that zone. And with work, it's when I'm coaching or mentoring somebody, and there's just this connection that I can't explain, and you can almost hear what they're saying. You know what they're going to say before they've said it, and you can feel them almost. It's almost physical. You can almost feel them coming towards a solution, a point, a way out of their problem, something that's going to help. And that to me is what I love about it. It's that moment where you can really feel that progress. As I say, almost physically feel it.
I'd be fascinated to do your strengths profile with you, because I feel like your strategic and your empathy will be up there. Empathy is that element where you're almost, it's not just being empathetic to someone's situation, but where you're empathic sometimes to the element where you can physically feel some of the stuff that's going on for them as well, which will make you a good mentor and a good coach.
Maybe we need another person.
Oh, thank you so much, Ian. I really, really enjoyed that. I've been looking forward to our time today. It was really a privilege. I know you think that you talk too much, but you really, really don't. And it was a real privilege to hear more about all of what had gone on in your career. And cool, because there's so much I think that the military do get right in terms of how it looks after its own. Obviously, nothing's perfect. Not everyone has a great experience, but many do. But I like that you've gotten to learn your really strong sense of right and wrong, your genuine passion for developing people, and also being able to be flexible in changing situations. And I think that you've just had this wide variety of experience at some really eye-watering levels of complexity. And sometimes in areas that have had this huge big picture impact on so many people, and they'll never know, And I think people really need to understand that depth of knowledge that you have and what you're capable of, because I think that's where your true marketable value actually lies. So you're no ordinary coach or mentor. If anybody listening today would like to find out more about you, Ian, and work with you, where can they find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so just look for Ian Astley on LinkedIn. And my firm is 𝗓𝗛𝗦 Consulting Limited. A Google search hopefully will take you to the right place. But the website is 𝗓𝗛𝗦inspire.co.uk.
Lovely.
And love to hear from anybody if they're
and I'll pop that all in the show notes for everybody as well, so it's easy and clickable. But thanks again, Ian.
Thanks very much indeed, Shelley. I really enjoyed that. And thanks for the advice too. We go away and
sorry about that. Became a consulting session in the end.
That's brilliant. All right,
thanks a lot, Ian. That's it for this episode, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. So, what did you think about that? Well, I realise that you might not have served in the military like Ian has, but I think there's a lot in Ian's sharing today that we could all take something away from. And sometimes being more cautious or a quieter professional who doesn't always necessarily get the most attention still has impact, gains the respect of others, and can hold authority in spaces. The beauty of doing personal brand strategy work is that anybody can do it if they set their minds to putting in the work and they intend to use it to get more comfortable gaining attention or drawing attention to themselves in a way that's actually comfortable and suits them. This work is very personal to you, and it's a way of strategically looking at all the things that make you unique and impactful in your personal and your work life, and pulling these together in a way that gives you the confidence to share yourself unapologetically with others. Transferring and applying our talents from one industry or business to another is a challenge that many of us have had to experience at least once or twice, if not more, in our professional lives. The key is that we don't purely focus on technical how-to skills or qualifications and cast aside the less obvious value of our daily human experience and our personalities. Knowledge workers or subject matter experts are magical humans. Their gold is deeply buried in their brains and their bones. So whether you fly jets, lead soldiers into battle, get airdropped in harsh environments with your team, or simply lead clients through tough waters, you are human, pulling on your golden magic to make decisions, guide others, exude safety, and pull solutions together that have impact. So who do you know who could do with listening to our conversation today and Ian's story? Share this episode. You know you want to. Until next time, my friends, stay strong, believe you have value, and make good brand decisions.
Thank you for listening to The Brand Compass. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with your entrepreneurial friends and help them make good brand decisions. Until next time, let's keep the conversation going at 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗡.com.